Hi, I'm Laurel Krause. I'm Allison Krause's sister. She was one of 4 students killed at Kent State, and I'm really happy to participate in this Kent State 50th Teach-In. Do you have some questions, Mickey?
I do, Laurel. Thanks so much for being a big part of this Kent State 50th Teach-In, and looking forward to you sharing your very important thoughts and experiences. The first of the questions, and these are bigger, broader questions, as you know. What does May 4th, 1970 mean to you? And of course, what is your memory of that fateful day?
As I mentioned, my sister, Allison, she was my older sister. She was 19, an honor student at Kent State, and I was 15. I learned about it getting off the school bus, going home. And that moment really changed my life. It was a childhood event. And at 15, when things like that happen, it kind of changes your life forever. And this did mine. It also instilled in me a lifelong goal of finding truth at Kent State and fighting for my sister. I raised my fist when she died. That's what it meant to me. But it also meant a lot to my family. It wasn't just me personally. My parents took Kent State to the courts, and it was a very hard battle because the courts were very closed to seeking truth and accountability when it was matters related to the government. And my father actually had to take it all the way to the US Supreme Court to get the right to sue the state of Ohio related to the killing of 4 and wounding of 9 at Kent State. And he won. And Ohio was a sovereign state. And so my father's victory, my father, Arthur Krause, his victory was to be able to bring suit and ask for accountability from the governor and all the people in the state. They weren't above the law. And this changed the laws for all sovereign states across America, not just Ohio. So that was probably about the biggest thing we ever got out of our search for truth and accountability at Kent State. I've had the opportunity to take it to the United Nations in 2014. And so I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in our family. We're all interested in truth and accountability, especially when it's related to wrongful acts, massacre acts of the government.
That's a pretty serious story and a series of events that really shaped a lot of your life and your family's life, and seeking justice for what happened at Kent State. So the next question is how has the May 4, 1970 Kent State Massacre influenced the collective then and now? And again, since I know that this has been such a really big part of your life and your struggle for justice.
Well, what we found when we were seeking truth and accountability at Kent State was that the government didn't want us seeking truth and accountability at Kent State, and they were doing everything in their power to stop us. And so for the 10 years following the Kent State Massacre, when my father was suing the government and 9 years of litigation, ended up with $15,000 in a statement of regret. And it was a phony statement of regret on top of it, and the $15,000 was really more of a slap in the face than any type of acknowledgement that is what a life is worth. Because obviously $15,000 for my sister's life, I mean, how ridiculous. But anyhow, we became targets of the government because we sought truth and accountability at Kent State. And Kent State seems to be it's like an Achilles heel of government wrongdoings. It's blatantly obvious that the massacre was perpetrated by the government. My sister was killed by a government bullet. Let that sink in. A government bullet. And it's just never been about the Kent State story that the government did it. It's never, we're not allowed to, because the media is trained, and those who train the media, which my theory is these days it's the CIA, that's what they think their job is. And now they've perpetrated all the cable media with all these security analysts that are interpreting the news for us, and all the defense people. Anyhow, we get the world through the TV and news. It's about war and propagating war and supporting war, and not about someone like my sister Allison, who stood for peace and against the war, and actually protested against the war and got gunned down while she was protesting against the war. And oh, by the way, that's criminal. A government isn't allowed to kill a protester. No. No. And when they do, because they do, then they have to follow certain procedures. They have to do a higher level of credible investigation. None of that has happened in Kent State. No, we're not allowed that. No, that we're not allowed nice things. No, no. They have to do certain actions to make amends. The opposite of that has been true. Just take a look at what's going on at the 50th. Not one word of amend, not one word of apology, not one word of, we shouldn't have done this. And 4 people died. And the other 9, that was attempted murder or target assassination, as they say at the United Nations. So how does it affect now? What happened to my family back then is like we had them on our telephones, they were in our mailboxes, they were threatening us. We got threats in the mail from J. Edgar Hoover himself. I know that's true, I mean, this is that they went to offering millions of dollars for us to, get off of our lawsuits. And my father said, I'm not interested in money. We've never been interested in the money. It's not about the money. And that's the problem here, because in America, it's always about the money. So as we watch this, back then we were just treated like dirt, and every element of our lives was under examination, and there were teams of people coming after us. Not just us, of course. This is anyone that seeks accountability for things like Kent State. There's long lists of people like this that the government has, and so we were under the microscope, with government people, causing trouble in our lives, big trouble. My father's job was threatened, and so then so that happened to us. But it wasn't happening to other people. Well, now it's happening to everybody. That's the concept of now. It's now we get, now everyone gets that USA Patriot Act treatment that we got back, in 1970. And I'm sorry for everybody. But maybe, I think people should band together and not be as willing to give up their freedom as they have been.
Well, Laurel Krause, that leads us to the third and final question, and maybe the most difficult one, but I think maybe also the most poignant and significant for us now. How do we make peace with the Kent State Massacre? And I say that in historical context. After momentous events like September 11th, and here we are in the midst of doing this commemoration seeking truth at Kent State 50 years later because of this COVID-19 pandemic. And so we were all supposed to be at Kent with you. You invited me to come and speak with you and speak for your family, which is a great
You
honor.
were going to speak for my sister.
And I still will.
Well,
but we won't be able to do it at Kent State, so that's why we put together this really important commemoration with so many people that were impacted what happened at Kent. But what we've seen post 9/11 and now in this pandemic crisis, there's a relentless quest by the state to curtail our rights, our civil rights, political rights, human rights are under assault. And part of making peace with Kent State maybe helps us be more mindful, or maybe drives us into doing the things that we really need to be doing today. Laurel Krause, could you speak to in any of those issues?
Kent State is a perfect example for us to learn from. If we would ever take off the blinders and look at it as it is, where it was a government action perpetrated against protesters and then immediately covered up and translated into something that wasn't. And it has been held for 50 years, and now the government is installing their historic reference of it, and here we go. And this is like how the government handles these things. So we have to do things like what you do, Mickey, with Project Censored, and just steadfastly demanding that we know the truth of these stories. And it's up to us. It's not up to the media. The media, the paid media, okay? They're paid off. Let's get real. Corporate owned, however it is, whether it's politically or, economically, it just is. And so to make peace, we have to go for the truth. But we also have to teach it. We have to teach that it's really important and that truth matters. And if we don't do that, I recently had a session with Emerson College, and the students there were talking to me, and they were saying, wow, I never learned Kent State, and I never learned about it. These kids, they never heard about it. They never learned about it. And they were pissed off. And they looked at me, they said, did you know this? And I said, listen, I've lived it. I mean, this story has been, censored since day one because it doesn't sit well. Hell, my sister said flowers are better than bullets the day before she was killed. The government doesn't like that story. So you're not going to find it at the 50th. And that is a big theme of the May 4th Kent State Massacre, that my sister said that. And the next day that she was slaughtered by a bullet. I mean, that story is forgotten. It's conveniently forgotten by our government, by Kent State University, for those who want to foster this false narrative. And the false narrative, it stops us from healing. It stops us from ever dealing with the pain and coming to terms with it and making peace with it. If you have to have truth in order to have peace. And finally, my personal aim, my personal goal here is for the protection of protesters today. Whatever happened to my sister and her friends and every other protester that has faced horrible government violence and death, this must never happen again in America. It is highly illegal for the US government to be killing protesters. We're coming into a difficult time now. I have worries. I'm concerned. We have to stop this. And the only way that we do that is everyone that's a protester has to understand that they have protester rights. This is a broadband issue. It's what connects us all. Let's connect together and let's begin our movement anew.
Well, Laurel Krause, couldn't agree more. History really matters, and the truth about history and getting the story right and hearing people's voices is really what it's all about. And I'm hopeful that this whole series of discussions and interviews that we're conducting, goes a long way into really pushing your ideas forward and pushing your hopes for a better, more just and peaceful world. So thank you very much, Laurel.
What I'm looking for is truth at Kent State, and maybe that will be included in the 50th story.
Well, we'll do our best to make sure it's there.
Thank you.